couple weeks ago, Tommy visited this classroom to give a speech. Since then, many students have also visited this classroom to give their own speeches. And today, I myself make my second visit to this classroom to give you a speech. We come to this class in Abilene, Texas, as HSU students because it is our duty to try to meet Dr. Bailey's standards so that we can pass this class. But I must admit, we come here for other reasons as well, such as Wisdom Wednesdays, questions of the days, and most of all, to hear that sweet applause after we finally got our speech over with. So today, that was a mimic of the introduction of Ronald Reagan's famous speech, Remarks at Brandenburg Gate, that is better known as Tear Down This Wall. Today I will be talking about why Ronald Reagan needed to come to Berlin to speak, the actual speech, Remarks at Brandenburg Gate, and how Berlin was impacted by his speech. So let's start with why he needed to come to Berlin. It was because of the Berlin Wall that was built right after World War II in 1961, and it was, according to DW Documentary, it was a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. They say that the Berlin Wall was actually made of 155 kilometers of concrete, which is about 97 miles of concrete. So why was this Berlin Wall built? Well, in East Berlin, there were communists that wanted to flee to West in freedom. And so East didn't want people leaving, and so they built a structure that would keep them from fleeing to freedom. And so how did this work? How did they keep them in? Well, if we look over at this picture right here, if we were an East Berliner, geez, it's a hard word, and we wanted to flee to freedom, to the West, first we would have to jump over about a 6-foot-tall fence. Then if we got over that, about 12,000 troops in total of this structure would have permission to shoot us on the spot. If they didn't notice us at the spot, there's a chain link fence right here with barbed wire at the top that if you touch, it would send a signal to these signal posts that would signal exactly where you were. If you got past that somehow, there were these things called tank traps that were filled with barbed wire that would cut you up and kill you. And there were also these things called death strips that were it's like a carpet-like structure that is about 14 centimeters long steel spikes that would just puncture your feet if you barely stepped on them. So if somehow you got past those, there was this road that was lit up as bright as day, even at night. And then there was a 5-foot ditch right here, and then finally the 12 feet tall Berlin Wall. So according to Berlin Wall Memorial, there were about 140 people killed from that structure alone. And so this is a big problem at the time because people were in a country that they didn't want to be in out of their free will. And so Ronald Reagan packed up his stuff and went to Berlin to speak on June 12, 1987. He starts his speech by trying to relate to his audience because he knew that most of them would be Berliners and also Germans. And so he starts off by saying why he loves Berlin and why other presidents came there and why they also love Berlin. Another way he relates to them is by speaking in their language, saying Ich hab noch einen Koffer, which means I still have a suitcase in Berlin. So the way he relates to them is saying like why they love being there, but also being able to relate with their own language. And so that's how he gets their attention and gets them to listen to him. So why does he choose Brandenburg Gate? Well, a little backstory behind Brandenburg Gate. It's actually the tallest part of the wall and the most seen part of the wall. And so he wanted to resemble and symbolize that he wanted to take the problem at its core and at its most powerful state and take it from there and try to get rid of that problem. So in the middle of his speech, he says, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." So this is a call to action that is usually seen in a conclusion. So why does he do it in the middle of his speech? Well, at the end of his speech, he ends with a quote from a young Berliner that said, "This wall will fall, beliefs become reality." So he uses this at the end of his speech to give hope to the Berliners and help them believe that this wall really can come down. So did that speech really help the wall fall? Well, less than 3 years went by and the wall finally opened after that speech. According to John Kornblum, the senior American diplomat in Berlin at the time when the wall opened and came down, he said that after that speech, East Berliners were saying it was just a warmongering speech, which means he was just trying to get people rattled and wanted people to get mad at East Berlin and attack them. And so East Berlin didn't think anything was wrong, and so they were like, no one's going to attack us, so they didn't worry about it. But he also said, all of a sudden, within weeks after the wall came down, people were talking about the speech. It emerged out of the dust, so to speak, and people were saying, "Look at that, Ronald Reagan foresaw this. He was the one to give it its last push." So although some people say that East Berlin didn't really care about the speech, some people say that the wall might still be here today without Ronald Reagan. So today I talked about why Reagan needed to come to Berlin to speak, the actual speech, "Tear down this wall" at Brandenburg Gate, and why this speech assisted the Berlin Wall falling. In conclusion, without Reagan and other presidents before him, this wall could have been there 5 years later, or even to this